So, well, this is a good time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry Matt Ray couldn't make it, but this does make my life a little easier.
Is he doing okay? Did he break a leg again or something?
I think so. I think he's doing fine. I think today was just your normal, just work conflicts coming
Work
up.
conflicts.
Right?
Gotta. That's what I tell.
We can all understand, right?
I more frequently in my life, I talk and I'm like, well, who invited my dad to this conversation? Because but I'll say things like, oh, I got to go make money. But I wanna play bingo. Nope, got to make money. Got to pay for those bingo cards.
Oh, hey man, somebody has to do it. All right, let me drop the link here in which channel we put it in? General? I guess we just put it in general. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I have this question every time we do it. Now,
I mean, in theory, we should put it in the software defined talk channel, but since it's our whole deal, who cares?
Did that? It's on the Twitter.
Look at that! I'm doing terrible community management. I just assumed ownership of the community that we're part of when there's
That's wrong. Yeah, it is absolutely wrong. Although we're slowly getting some other podcast channels in there. Cloudcast is in there in the Slack. There's a little some discussion in there.
They don't have their
cool stuff.
They don't have their own Slack.
They do, but I don't think they advertise it. Brian said they don't, so I was like, hey, I'll create one. He's like, yeah, no problem. He actually mentioned our Slack on his show a couple weeks ago, which is cool.
Oh. Really? I'm going to look this up. Cloud.
And that's the other thing. Cloudcast, they did an episode recently. They're thinking about doing videos. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And, I just told them we'd like to collaborate. Like, I kind of wanted to do videos for Software Defined Talk for a while. That's sort of one of the reasons we got all the streaming and stuff set up. But haven't done anything. Haven't had any video production like yours. What's this Michael Neal? Like, he really liked your... What was it, pasta? Some kind of pasta dish?
Yeah. I was going to say, if only one of us knew how to make videos, we could really break into that.
But my assumption is that, like, how long was the last video? Like a few minutes? Like how long?
It was like 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
So 2 minutes and 10 seconds. How long to create that? Like in 2 hours? Create 2 minutes? Something like that?
That took probably 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that normally, is that true?
See, but that's about, like, I think you're about to say, well, it's not really that long. It's like, actually, I think, like an hour, a minute or something like that's probably.
Yeah. Well, to create that kind of video, yes, takes a long time. I was going to say, if you're just sitting in a chair, it doesn't take that long. Right?
True.
So
if you can make it.
Yeah. I either do other like 2 to 10 minute videos that are
like talking head videos are easier. Like you don't have any live shots or anything.
Yeah. I mean, especially if it's one person, you got to like stop, move the camera, go over here, do that, do this. And then also with that kind of like really quick cutting, small, multiple shot video, there's a lot of editing, obviously, but a lot of editing.
I like TikTok. I like watching the TikToks. I don't know, people I think have different opinions, but I'm always like, there's some really, I mean, like even when I think those videos can't be any more than a few minutes, and there's a lot of talking heads. But even watching people, like, it's clear they're doing like different little segments, and they've kind of edited and stitched it together, and it's like, I mean, I think that takes a while too, right? But it's good. Like when you see one that's pretty good, even though it maybe looks a little bit informal, it's like this informal video probably took a while to like make, even in the TikTok.
Yeah, you should send me some of those. I want to peruse some new formats.
Yeah. Well, I like the, there's like TikToks, like, there's a million different versions of genres, but like stuff that I've picked up some cooking tips, that's an easy one. Like, hey, here's how to make I don't know, maybe you'll know, this was like a genius to me, but maybe I wanted to see if you know it. Like, okay, if you want to make a fried egg, which is, just to be obvious here, like you take the egg and you flip it so it's sort of cooked on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Like have you ever made one without flipping it? Have you ever heard this trick?
I've done the thing. I have done it before where it's like crispy and like there's one way we like put a lid over it so it basically steams.
So this is that's exactly right. So like this guy was like, I was like, I never heard of that, and I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, if you're worried about flipping it and messing up your egg, just do this. And I was like, love it. Made one this morning that way. I'm like, so I don't know. There's like lots of stuff like that, right? Or there's the whole Excel. Like Excel has its own subculture in there, and it's like, this key command does this, and you're like, that's pretty. I mean, I don't know. So it's a lot of it's useful, but a lot of it's nonsense too. Right?
No, a lot of nonsense. Maybe we need to figure out some way of sharing that, because when TikTok, wow, when TikTok was like, people my age became aware of it like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Like I remember I spent a lot of time trying to figure out like business oriented content, and I don't know, I didn't come across a lot of things. But yeah, nowadays there's also like I searched around for like Kubernetes and sysadmin, and there's this one guy who I forget what his name is, but he does like, you know, when whatever, like that kind of, is it a meme construct where it's like, you know, when you discover you didn't wear pants to work or whatever, and so
Right,
you know,
okay.
it'll be like, you know, when the SAN install fails or something.
Okay.
And it'll just
And then
be,
it's just like, and then this happened, and then do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
it's kind of painful.
Yeah, no,
to
I feel like a
watch.
lot of your, like, you got like, I don't know, as the kids say, it feels like you're always creating very snackable content. Like it feels very, like you're on
Snackable.
TikTok though. You put it on, like I see like your videos roll through once in a while. on
Oh
there,
yeah, that's
so-
probably because you follow me, but
Well, that's what's fun.
the algorithm hates me.
Well, I think it is hard. I think it's competitive, like everything, right? So
Maybe we should check
nothing
in
is
here.
easy, you know. So
How's the old TikTok doing? You know, you can access it through the World Wide Web as well.
I do, but like nobody does that. It's like Instagram. Nobody uses the Instagram website.
Oh, this guy is. Oh, this is very distracting. Yeah, the Instagram website. There's something you can do. I don't know. No, you used to be able to like upload longer videos through the website, but now I think Instagram uploaded the length of videos you can do.
Is it 5 minutes? That's what TikTok is now. So you can go. You can go for a while.
Here, let me just make a little point here. Where's the where is this screen, Brandon? See, this is my last experimentation with TikTok. Oh wait, you've gotta add my screen.
I'm adding your other person. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So you can see this video. This is me talking about how you can get a free Kubernetes distro.
Okay.
That got 288 views. And this is a picture of a pumpkin that dances. And that got 598. See?
Yeah. Well, the pumpkin is. I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, it's got a pumpkin GIF. You know, how do you go wrong with that?
Someone found, maybe this is a well-known site, but the site that I think it's like machine training learning for
Okay.
some animation company, and you draw a stick figure like that, and you just upload it to the site, and it animates it for you. Like it figures
Okay.
out where the arms and the legs and the stuff are. And then also, obviously, the one that has gotten the most attention is using the bottle liquor to get some stuff out of Nutella. I think that's up around 4,000 or so views. So, you know.
But you sound disappointed? You know, like
Well, you know, I would like, you know, well, I mean, this one is pretty rewarding because, well, do you get the sound off of that?
Like, where's your TikTok? Like, put your TikTok URL in the chat so that way we can, you know,
Okay.
get your views up or whatever.
I want to get my views up.
Get your
Here we go. We'll say,
But I think, I don't know,
Cote's
but like part
TikTok.
of me about all of the now we're like zoomed on. I was gonna say I kind of feel like this is just in general. It's like there's this idea that everyone wants all the channels to be kind of very segmented. Like this is an enterprise work thing, and this is like that's kind of like a LinkedIn versus maybe like
Yes.
Instagram, and it's like no, I mean. Like if you're in like a purely consumer thing and you're like putting technical content in, you're just never going to get the same amount of views. But that's kind of where people are, right? I don't know. There's just like this missing. I feel like there's just like an I don't know. There's like the crossover. People don't want it to cross over, but it's like
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
the audience
you-
is there. Like somebody is okay seeing a pumpkin dancing. That is potentially your target audience to see a Kubernetes video and then to go see like I don't know, dogs. Right? It's
maybe I should have put the pumpkin dancing in Twitter.
Right. Like, I don't know. It's just like, that's what human beings are. Like we kind of move around. Like, yeah, sometimes we want gifts. Sometimes we want dogs. And then like occasionally show me some cool tips around Kubernetes. If I'm that kind of person, then like, yeah, that's just kind of, it just sort of like works itself in, but no one, I don't know. I feel like at work, people are always like, now where's the syndication? What's the URL? How many leads off the URL did we get for the webinar that we posted to Vimeo that's only accessed this way? And it's like, I don't know. People don't.
Do you have all the mechanics to make that work? Like I think I've only just recently, after however long I've been here, like kind of figured out how the machine does all of that. Like Like, I always tell my tales of spelunking in Salesforce. And so I think I've figured out how to connect the dots between the campaign names, the UTM encoding.
Get your code. Yeah, your code and how it flows. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, anyways, I think I might have figured it out.
It's always a work in progress. I feel like you never, like, even if you know it today, it changes. So it's like a CI/CD pipeline. You have to kind of stay on top of it. You're like, oh, wait a minute. This changed. I have to update this.
Yeah, that's true. It's also like changes all the time. So now what I'm doing right now, Brandon, because this is a good use of our time, is I'm creating, in what's it called? Loopback, which you have. Do you have Loopback? Great program. I mean,
I don't actually have that one, but I know
it's more or less like audio hijack. I've tried to figure out. I don't think
they have the bundle. They sell them as a bundle. Everyone should buy them both.
Yeah,
the mistake was I didn't just buy it as the bundle. Like that's what that's what everyone learns. I think one of our listeners, Brian, said he's like, oh, I just emailed them and they let me buy the bundle. I was like, smart.
I see. So let's see. I don't want desktop because then it'll pick you up. I want to add in because I want to play this. Then I can play videos here. Let's make sure that this.
But you make it. You know what I do have that you don't. I have the Rode caster where it makes it even easier, right? Where I don't have to do all this loop back. I could just like right here on the iPad, I could just like pipe in some music from anything.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That would be cooler.
Yeah, I've become a hardware specialization person. Like that's my, buy the hardware device. Don't do all this, software.
Yeah. I passed on buying one of those things. I didn't want to think about it. But maybe
now
I should
you get to configure loopback. So there you have it.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay. Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another video that got a lot of views. Where is it? Oh, here we go.
These are peach halves, and you can just eat directly.
Does it have sound? It doesn't even have sound.
I'm hearing it.
Oh, it steals it from me.
You can eat just.
Let me go back to loopback. I don't want to mute it.
Well, your peach.
And you can eat just directly
there you go.
from the can.
Now I can hear it.
These are peach halves.
That's it.
You can just eat directly.
Well, it's good. I mean, a lot of people don't know. Like, maybe that's new in the Dutch? Do they not eat out of a can like that?
I'm not sure. And then you drink the juice afterwards. You want to see? Anyways, but often I think like I should long ago have just stuck to one channel, not Flickr. That would have been a dead end. But like maybe I should have just built up YouTube followership or whatever. It's never too late to start, but it's often too late to get the impressive numbers you could have if you had started earlier.
At the beginning. But you kind of have to try them all out too. That's the hard part. So yeah, I get you though. Yeah, YouTube, like being great at one is definitely is much better than being average across a bunch of them. So
yeah. I think if you just stick to LinkedIn and Twitter and you archive on YouTube, I think that's pretty good. Unless you're a dancing pumpkin.
Well, most importantly, you got to have a podcast. So there we go. So that, that's where we started pretty long ago. So we can at least claim victory on that one.
That's the crossover we need that got canceled we need all the people who download the podcast to also subscribe to our other channels.
If only the world worked that way. I think every creator has said that everywhere. Like, I need you to follow everything that I do.
Please.
All right. Creator. We ready to get started here?
Yes.
Let me put my timestamps in. All right. Just one ad break. Working on a couple new sponsors. We'll see if we can get it done. But Strong DM is our sponsor this week, so we appreciate them. All right, that's it. Just one ad break, and then I don't know, wherever you want. I put some stuff in here, but if you got ideas, we can.
No, that's good. I haven't read that open source thing in detail, so maybe you can do the overview of it, and then we'll see what comes up. And we'll check in on Web3, see what's happening. That's good. Little hootenanny there. All right. Okay. One ad break, right?
One ad break.
Okay. Well, our daughter, 1.5-year-old, Mila, she has discovered toothpaste. Ooh. And now, babies, they try everything out. I think that one of the book I recommended last time was The Good Enough Parent. And it makes, it has this good explanation of, if you would imagine an alien who has just landed on the planet, and is not familiar with everything, that's basically like what a baby and a toddler is like. They're just discovering everything for the first time.
Yep.
That's why, you know, like tonight, I took her on the dog walk with me, and every time an airplane flies over, she like stopped and just points at it as if to be like, check that out.
What is this? Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I found myself, I found myself saying as we were walking, it's like, oh yeah, that's an airplane. I used to be on those a lot. And then I was like, don't travel anymore. Anyways, but it was still nice. Now,
Before you get off that, it is nice when you have a very young child, because it is an opportunity to just narrate your life for no reason, because it is like, that's how kids learn, right? Like, so you can you can just completely have a monologue of just doing very mundane things, and then just asking rhetorical questions. Like, and it's just I think it's funny, as children get older, you're like, oh, I have to stop doing that now. That's a sign of maybe some type of mental problem. But yeah, when you have small kids, like, that's all you do. Just walk around and monologue everything, you know, because they're the audience. They're so excited, right? They're just looking at you, and they're like either asking questions or just mimicking you. So that's the advantage of having very young children.
Yeah, and I think to that point, that's interesting, because, you know, I think there's some infamy around the idea that the older you get, the more you just like read signs out loud. You know, you're just like driving around and you're just like, student movers, huh? Or you know, like,
so that's a sign. You know, I feel like now you're saying, like, I feel like I do that, so that's a sign of just being old.
Yeah,
all right,
or just like you know, Spring Lake U-Haul.
But wait, now with their older son, I would like to compare and contrast here, because what's as I was saying before, like, at some point you have to stop to do it. So now my son is 11, and probably the most common response to anything I say is, quote, I know. End quote, right? So that's what he says all the time to me, right? Like, it can be anything, right? I mean, it can be anything. Even when I know he doesn't know it, he'll say that. So, but there's this point of like, you're like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, I like, you know what's going on. Like, you're no longer, to your earlier thing, you're no longer an alien. You're part of the human race here, and you know what's going on. So I don't need to tell you what that is, even though, because I think that's where the whole like dad-splaining comes from, right? It's like, you're sort of like, do it at the beginning because you know it is helpful for a young child, but then it's sort of, you know, it's like you're almost like you're just stuck, right? You keep doing it, and then people are like, why are you mansplaining, dad-splaining to me? You're like, I don't know, it just happened.
Well, I think in defense of that, you know, dad, mom, parent splaining, it's hard after a while to figure out like what it is your kids remember, and also what you need to constantly remind them of. Like, you know, my is it bête noire? Like, it's just like there's these 3 critical minutes of the day, and that is, we've got to get you to school. And like, you know, I even joke every now and then, I'm like, I know we haven't done this before for like 7 years, but like, let me go over what we're doing here, like what the deal is. And, you know, I just, the other day we just didn't get out the door in time, and I started biking again. And I didn't lose it in the sense of getting upset. I lost it in the sense existentially. And I was just like, you guys got to help me. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't understand. I've tried everything. I got nothing.
Right, and that's where, like, you know, that's where, you know, the quote unquote, like, you know, becoming more and more strict with rules, right? That's like, at some point, that's all you have left, right? And you just, so I'm with you. But I will say, I did this last night. I would like you can critique this. It's like, because I get, you know, I know a lot, and I think one thing, like, I think it's fair. Like, I think it's a fair criticism of maybe all parenting in this age is like, hey, you don't let kids fail enough. Let them just do it and fail. That's a better way to learn. So my son last night, for some reason, we had like the old school popcorn that came in like this tin, you know, the tin foil that you kind of put over some heat and it just kind of blows up.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so we had it for like some camping reason. Anyway, he decided last night, he's like, I want to make it. I'm like, okay, fine. Right. He's old enough. He knows how to use everything. And so I asked him, do you need any help? He said, no. And I asked him again, as like, I was like, he's in the kitchen. And then I was like, are you sure? Do you need any assistance? He said, no. So I was like, go for it, right? And of course, like, you know, this isn't going to go well. Like, it's just not going to go well, right? And so he starts it up, right? Turns the heat on too high. And, you know, it's anyway, and he's not like, you know, moving it and like kind of keeping it like in constant movement as you're supposed to juggle it. And so So it's slowly, it starts to burn, right? And then my wife gets up, right? Because she's doing something, and she gets over and she's like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" Because it's going bad. It's like it's burning, and she's trying to show him how to do it. And then eventually, it smokes a little bit. So then, of course, what happens? The smoke detector goes off, and it's like super loud in the house. And I honestly, I just sat there. I was just like very mellow about the whole thing, and so at the end, it was fine, right? It was just fine. Threw the popcorn out, it didn't work. And I was thinking to myself, this is great parenting. Like, so I'm just like, hey, now he knows, right? And so, and then he came over and he said something like, well, you didn't really offer to help. And I was like, whoa, man, this is the moment I was like, I asked you multiple times and I let you do. And so, but then like everyone seemed to be mad at the end of that. Like, my wife was like, well, why did this not work? And my son was like, and I was like, so in the end, right, it's like you're kind of being cornered back into the mansplaining thing. You're like, I tried to let nature take its course here, but people didn't like the outcome. So I don't know. Is it damned if you do, damned if you don't? Or is it just like, that was fine? That was actually a good experience. But it doesn't mean like today when I ask him later on, after I see him today, I'll ask him if he wants help or something. I'm sure he'll say he doesn't. So maybe nothing was really changed in that whole scenario.
Yeah. Well, anger and frustration has to be channeled somewhere. I think I haven't finished. I think I've referenced this before, but I haven't finished reading this book on like emotions. That's this famous book,
right?
And he makes the point that they've studied that like in the wild, like animals often do the following, like especially like gorillas and chimps because they're studied a lot, and like if there's two gorillas. And they get in a fight, and the one that loses often walks away, and then finds another one, like just another random monkey, and just like hits them, just because it like feels better is the theory, right? And similarly, like if you think about that, there's a lot of times where you go like be angry at someone, and it's because someone was angry at you, and you just have to like discharge it.
True.
And it makes you feel a little better. And so like similarly, I think like even if you learn by failing. You got to channel that disappointment somewhere, and then that is the annoying thing. Is like, well, why did you let this happen? Like, I don't know.
Well, more importantly, bring us back to
anyhow. She discovered
what happened with did she learn that you're not supposed to like?
No, I think
that seems like the outcome.
Well, that's what we're teaching her,
right?
You're not supposed to eat it, but. The other day, she also discovered. I think toothpaste has allowed her to discover hiding out.
Oh,
yes. So she somehow grabbed the toothpaste, and then she went around to the side of the sink, and she was standing there, and I think she thought we couldn't see her.
Yeah.
And so we crept over there, and then she like slowly looked up to like indicate that she could see us, and so that's exciting. Now she knows how to hide, which I think is going to be a good skill with two older siblings.
All right, hiding out. I like it. Let's see, what was that? 22. It's
I
actually think little
talk.
kids hiding is like such a fun. That's another like really fun time because it's like it's so easy to find them, and they think it's so. I don't know. They just enjoy it so much. Like the problem is when they get to the point where they're actually good at hiding, and you're like, this is annoying. I liked it better when it was just you stood behind a wall and thought you were like invisible. So, well, speaking of hiding, one thing you want to do, Cote, is you want to hide all your credentials so that people don't know what they are. And the way that you can do that is you can use a product like StrongDM. It'll help you manage access to all your systems so that only the people that actually need access get access. And really, honestly, nobody knows your passwords because that's what's important. So everyone, go see our friends at StrongDM and tell them Software Defined Talk sent you.
That should be a new policy or a new principle is no one, even you, should know your passwords. Like you need to, that would be ideal.
That's one password, baby. That's like, I actually, I took the plunge. I think I mentioned it. I got my mother-in-law helped her get on 1Password. I'm gonna check in and see how it went in, but it was like, I don't know. I kind of made this decision. I'm like, passwords aren't going anywhere. Like you're going to have to learn this. And it's like, here, learn 1Password. So that was my point to her. It's like, hey, because I was showing her like how I log into stuff. Like, and I made the point like, I don't know. I only know one path to quote unquote. I only know 1Password, and like I don't even know any of these other things. In fact, most of the time I'm not even typing them. And I was kind of showing them, like it's cool if you demo. It's sort of like sales engineering for 1Password. If you show someone like, watch me log into all these sites and never type a password, right? That's what gets someone hooked. And then you got to start explaining how it works, because there is a lot of learning curve to that for most people. So
anyway, it doesn't always work very well either, or something. But
have you made?
it's seamless.
Does Kim use 1Password in your house?
I mean, only when she has to. She's at least gotten to the point where she'll say, "Can you tell me the password for this?" I already looked in 1Password for it, and I didn't see it.
That's good. That's a good step. What about your son? Have you introduced him to it?
No.
Okay. See, I think I would make the case. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's still right there. It's like, if you can get that age group onto it first. Yeah, they're pretty open to new. Everything's new. To your point, they're aliens to it all. So just teach them that way. They don't get any bad habits. Like, I've had some success there, but it's probably case by case, right?
Yeah. I should do that. We'll take a few days to learn about password management. That'll be good stuff. No,
seriously, they always want people to come speak at school, and I'm just waiting for the day that I feel like I can do a security little 30-minute hour talk on that. Like, I don't know, I'm just kind of it's like a conference. I have the presentation. I'm just trying to see how I can slide it in to whatever they want. Is it going to be a security thing, like a health and safety thing? Is it like a computing thing? Because I'm ready to go when the school wants it.
There you go. That's a video we should do. You need to do that in TikTok. Password management. That can be your little TikTokers.
Yeah. People. All right. Here we go.
Well, speaking of kids, I have two more things. One, I have a small thing I want to mention. I know that over in our little community in the Slack group, some people have. It's a very small story, but I had a little bit of a trial getting my son Cormac set up with the game on a laptop. We decided to abandon it because the laptop was just not powerful enough to do anything with Arc. It was very difficult. It's very strange.
No Arc faults on that laptop.
Yeah,
I'm still fighting Arc faults in my house. Go on.
That's I think that's Steam, right? I found the whole Steam experience very bizarre. It was a very weird. I'm sure once you use it for a week or so, it's like everything else. It seems normal, but it just seemed like they just decided to come up with their own way of doing software. That just it's
a little bit in some ways it's a little bit reminiscent of Kubernetes, right? It's we had to just go a whole different way. But if you get there and you're like, oh, now I can get all the games, right? It's if you get over that learning curve, you're like, this is better. But go on.
It just felt like, when you open an app and it's like a swing app and you're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Everything is different. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And anyhow, but he wanted to change his gamer tag, his handle. And so I was working on that with him. And thankfully he doesn't have to pay for it at this point. And so, he wanted to be Eclipse. And I was like, well, we'll see if that's available.
Probably not.
Yeah. And then, he went through all these things and he kept trying. And then finally he just it was sad. He just got so frustrated and angry. And it was hard to just, you can't just tell him I explained the facts to him, which that's never a good idea. Right? It's never, no one is ever satisfied when they hear something there are a lot of people who play this for a long time. And so they've come up with a lot of names. There's millions of people. And so that's why you can't find the name. And then, after gnashing their teeth and pounding the desk, the person's like, oh, okay, that seems reasonable. No one's like a Jedi or anything. So yeah, I don't know if he's come up with a name yet, but I did find a site that suggests random names for you. And maybe he'll work on that. But more importantly, in the kids' digital transformation, I had not come across this until you brought it to my attention, Brandon. But it looks like in a couple years that back in the U.S. there's this thing called the SAT, the Standard Assessment Test.
I think it's Aptitude test, but whatever.
Aptitude,
close enough.
Aptitude's a bit ambitious. Maybe that test has changed over the years since I took it, but you're gonna have to do it online. No more number 2 pencils and bullets. I wonder if that will change a lot of the strategies. I haven't looked into it fully, but I wonder, can you take it from home, or do you still have to go to a place?
I thought this was really interesting because we always like talking about digital transformation, and I like to talk about things that are just not talking about Netflix and Twitter and all that. And so as I'm just looked it up here, it's the Scholastic Aptitude test.
Oh, there
the
you go.
SAT. So that's the official name. So for all of those listeners outside the United States, the SAT has traditionally been one of two tests almost every student seeking to apply to college would take, right? And so, and it's been a 3-hour test. It's been given a paper and pencil for, I don't know, Cote, since the beginning. So, well, even before you and I, even since you and I think it was designed in like the 1960s, but it's essentially been taken by everyone that's trying to attend college for whatever since then. And so the change this week I thought was really interesting because one, they did officially announce that in a couple of years, the test will only be given online, and you will have to still take it at like some type of proctored place, a school or something like that. But you'll either be able to use the school's computing resources, or it sounds like you can bring a laptop or even a tablet, which I think that's interesting. It's like, oh man, I don't know, it'd just be interesting to take something on a tablet like that. I don't know, maybe it'll be easy. But the things that I thought were interesting about it was the other change was they're going to make the test just 2 hours. So traditionally it's 3 hours, and there used to be some other stuff like writing and things like that. So they're just moving it to 2 hours. And so one, I think it's just amazing. Like, let's just think about this as like a digital transformation exercise, right? So I just happened to come across it yesterday. So 1.7 million, people took the SAT last year. So you can just do the math. It's like everybody involved in giving, taking, and grading this test now gets an hour back, right? So I'm like, wow, that's got to be one of the biggest, easiest quantified digital transformation changes ever, right? So I mean, we're talking, over probably 2-3 million hours of time given back to people to just do whatever they want. So I think that's an incredible, like if we were building out the success slide of digital, that's what we would put on there first. Two, but I have to ask, my question though, it's just like, why suddenly, like on this date, why was it decided that like it only takes 2 hours to assess your aptitude for college after 50 or 60 years of having it to take 3? Like, don't you think this breakthrough what could have like happened like, I don't know, 30 years ago? Like that part I think is really interesting. Like, and of course that calls into question, like I would have a ton of questions all around. It's like, well, could we do it in 90 minutes? Like, do you like keep ratcheting it back? Like how like exactly how long do we need to take the SAT? Because even if you did well on the SAT, I don't think many people enjoy taking the test. I don't know. Did you enjoy it? Was this something fun for you?
No.
Right?
I was terrible at stuff like, I didn't enjoy things like that back then at all. I guess I probably wouldn't enjoy it now, but yeah, that is, in the article, there are quotes from several people about how it's more efficient on the computer. But I think it is, it is like an hour's lost assessing someone. It is. I guess you could cut back on things, but really, like, could it be that efficient? Because you're talking about turning pages.
Let me give you the I guess some of the theory behind it. Now I don't know. Surprisingly, I wasn't involved in rewriting the SAT. I just shockingly, but what I do know is other standardized tests that I have taken, because other things like the GMAT and other like more, I guess, what do you call it? What secondary, master's education, kind of school. They've been doing this for a while. You've been able to take these online, and what they do is based on the answers to the previous questions determines the next question. So the idea is that like, if you're showing competence in a very easy subject, or at least easy to you, they'll give you a harder question and then give you a harder question. So that way, if you think about the SAT, it was sort of like, well, you got to ask kind of like, all kind of tiers of the question, maybe like the easy, the medium, the hard, and the super hard. Whereas the computer can kind of like, Coach, you're doing well in this section. Let me advance you to the next set of questions because I only need to see a certain amount. So that I think is an advantage. That's maybe one reason.
So there's like less. You might end up with less questions, basically.
Right, less questions, and I guess, but a sufficient sample so that someone that's like designing this test can say like, oh, he answered whatever this amount of the hard questions, right? So we're pretty confident it wasn't just luck, right? It was he demonstrated knowledge, and maybe that's like 5 or 10 questions versus being 20 or so. I have no idea. But I don't know. It's still, it does make me think though, just the opposite stuff is like, well, if you're never pushed to like make it shorter, right? I mean, this is definitely one of those things of monopoly. Like if you wanted to go to college up until recently, you had to take this test. So if it was 3 hours, you just took it. Like there was no one to complain to, right? So I think that part is really interesting. And then two, I just think on the administration side, right? Again, back to digital transformation, think about all the paper that doesn't have to be collected, all the, pencils and all of that kind of stuff. And also I think proctoring the exam got a lot easier in the sense of like, you're going to be able to use a calculator. So you just kind of have to watch somebody with a computer and a calculator and just make sure they don't do anything else, right? There's no really it just seems a lot simpler. And then, at the end, the proctor doesn't have to collect all this stuff up, mail it off. The Scantrons have to then manually be unpacked, scanned. And then of course the inevitable, scores need to be, entered into some system. And then that system has to be sent out. And most of the time, I think back when we took it, I think you got the SATs in the mail. I think you can actually still log in and get your scores, but you still have to get the official score in the mail. So that's another, I thought a huge win for digital transformation, right? It's like, look at that, all that stuff instantly gone. You walk in, you take the test, 2 hours. I'm sure they can send you your scores immediately. The proctor just says, thanks for coming in, closes the door. They don't have to do any administration. So another a huge win for everyone trying to go to college, I guess.
Yeah. There's just the written part that maybe even a human doesn't need to read it. You can just send it to Grammarly.
Well, they got rid of that. They got rid of the
written part.
The essay part is now
gone. That's crazy. Huh.
Well,
that's the only part that I would do good on, I think. Otherwise it's just like math and I don't know math. It's terrible.
Right. But the other thing that I think here is interesting too is to kind of what you're talking about is what has also changed here. And again, as we often talk about digital transformation, there's some external factor that has happened. So obviously the pandemic, because of that, most colleges loosened up on having to take the SATs just in general, because it was difficult to get groups of people together to take it. So a lot of schools said, hey, we're not going to require this anymore. And so now I think it's something like 80% of colleges don't require the SATs to apply, right? So
nice.
It's become an optional thing. But if you're the owner of SAT, right, and you're the people, so that's a huge risk to your business. So you've gone from maybe 2.5 million people taking this test down to 1.7 million this year. And going forward, most of the schools now are going to make it optional. So you can see a point where either, it completely goes away. Nobody, I was talking to my son, maybe your son as well, and just saying I don't know, by the time they're of the age to take this, you'd only take it if you're going to get a good score and you think it's going to aid your application, right? Otherwise, why, if you're just sending a bad score, you're never going to send it in. So it's sort of maybe by the time that they're applying to school, it just won't matter at all. So that will be the full digital transformation, be they're now out of business.
Oh yeah. They went through, they modernized and they chose the option of all the R's, retire. That's
right.
That's the one that they wanted to get rid of. Well, that's maybe there'll be a little app on a phone. You can just recreationally take SATs, mini SATs, just for fun.
But it does seem this seems like the perfect place to disrupt it. Somebody that was smart at this would be could you get this test to an hour, right? And could you make it super and could you build in all the training and practice right into the whole curriculum? Be the new test is called whatever, College Test X. And here's the site, and you can go on and study for it and practice as much as you want. Here's the fee. And if you decide that you want to send your score in, you just put in your information, and they'll even get rid of this proctor thing. A lot of people are now doing just turn on your video camera, right? During the test, and they just count that as online proctoring in some ways. And it's so you have this way, if you make it a lot easier and a lot shorter, and you make it really easy, everyone has equal access to all the test prep. It's it seems that's an easy place to potentially make it easy for people to take it and really displace the SAT once and for all.
Yeah, that would be great. It was never fun taking those tests. Yeah, so annoying. Now, meanwhile, it's time to check in as always into the business of open source, Brandon. I don't know if we have a Web3 update for this episode, but the other thing we like to talk about every episode is what's up with open source. And I think there's still some theories after the old Log4j thing and other stuff that floating around of how do we in a world where it's there aren't necessarily people getting paid to take care of this stuff or the same dynamics happening, how do we ensure that the core foundational open source stuff is taken care of and that someone's paying attention to it? What's the assurance that we have? And now I want you to go over. I've got this image here. I've read through the article a little bit, but I couldn't read through it in detail. But now we've got, I want to call it the pyramid and arrows model. to
right.
discuss something going on.
We'll make it part of the show or art. So if you look down at your podcast player right now, you'll be able to see a picture of this nice pyramid with arrows.
But what's our buddy at Badger here? What's he's proposing? Does he get to a solution?
Well, I think to some degree he does, but I think he does a good job, I think, of just laying out the problem. And I think maybe it's obvious to everyone, but I think, his arrows are sort of kind of saying at the top, right? So if you think about it, if you're building out an application that you personally care about, you're going to have a custom UI, you're going to have some type of, devices and web services that you care about. And the part that's good about that is like, that's going to be something that you're building, and it's going to be your proprietary information. It's going to be the thing that makes you money. So of course, there's going to be a lot of incentives to make sure that works well, that there aren't any bugs, that it's secure and things like that. And so what he kind of talks about is you go down the pyramid, it gets bigger, right? It's like, well, then you have, of course, your tools and compilers and your browsers. So, right, there's a whole group of people building those, and there's relatively good incentives to keep those things secure for various reasons. And then you kind of get to the bottom, and this is where you get to like really a lot of the open source, right? So, whether it's like the libraries, your frameworks, your various implementations. And at that point, he just kind of points out like that's the place that there are not a lot of incentives, right, for anyone to make sure that all works and secure. Even though most people are going to use them, it's kind of a commons kind of thing. No one feels responsible, if you will, to make sure it's always working and there aren't that many problems. And that's where we get stuff like Log4j. And I think there was actually recently, there was another type of problem. And so I think his point he was trying to say is like, one of the things people try to do is starve it, is to offer up money. Like, hey, we'll pay somebody to fix this. And he talks a little bit about like, as the projects get smaller, it's not that helpful because one, for like a big organization to give someone money, it's not always that easy, right? It's like, if I want to give you money to like be an OSS, it's like you actually need some way to do that. So that's one thing. And then two, of course, it changes the kind of the relationship. Like if I'm suddenly giving you a grant, right? And giving someone a grant directly, not that easy, right? So it's like, like you, Cote, probably don't have the ability to accept a grant today, right? But even if you did, now there's sort of like this idea that like, you kind of work for me, right? Or at least there's some implicit kind of thing, which starts to get into that. So the thing he's kind of pointing out, and I think kind of comes back to probably what every open source project wants, is like, you actually want more contributors, right? You want people actually helping and getting involved, whether it's testing the software or actually doing some of the security stuff. But he talks a little bit about, that seems to be kind of like, the last thing that, people come to, right? The hardest thing to do and the best thing to do is probably be like, hey, assign some people to work on this and become an active member of the community. But that's sort of like, you only do that once there's like a major problem like Log4j. Like people kind of descend in and they get in there and they start looking at it and offering up help. But I think his point is like, how do we incentivize that from the beginning, right? Don't just sit around. And I think that's like an interesting question going forward for the whole industry. It's like, it's sort of like maybe there's a little bit of like eat your vegetables in that kind of statement, but you still have to do it.
Yeah, that's probably true for all open source stuff. Is like the best thing, if you have money, so to speak, the best thing you can do is like use that money to like pay a person to work on it rather than just transferring the money. But then as a company or an organization, you're kind of, you put yourself in a weird position of like, we employ this person and they don't make us any money. Right? Like they're not, it's not even that they're a cost center. They just like, there's no direct contribution to it. And like, but that's probably what would be the most helpful. And I mean, that's what basically you are paying someone to work on open source kind of on your behalf to check things out for you, also doing the little dance of like, you can't tell people what to do and all that kind of stuff, right? And figuring that out. And it reminds me of, just by coincidence, I watched one of the webinars that we had. I do this fun thing in my Tanzu Talk streaming video now. I think this is a phrase, right? Like I have a watch party of one, and I watch another video and I comment on it as I watch it. It's good stuff. It's especially good because these are like, it's a real double bagger, as it were, because these are videos I need to watch anyways. And then I also not only do I watch the video to get the content, but I also create content while I'm watching them. It's just,
So it's like a
good
Mystery
stuff.
Science 3000 kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're
I'll have my
I
little
like it.
head down there, and I'll
Yeah.
be. And sometimes I'll stop it and be like, make little
This is the
comments.
equivalent of like watching the webinar, but then like having a Slack channel open where everyone's commenting on it, which forces you to like watch the webinar, which I think is
That's
good.
right. That's right.
Go
Yeah,
on.
that's the other good thing. Anyways, it was about tech debt, and not only like defining tech debt, but they were trying to come up with a scheme similar to this, where if you are a product manager, you can actually, or you can actually kind of weigh addressing tech debt, which has no
Direct.
no direct
Yeah.
value, with like also implementing a feature, right? Like, so that's the trade-off, as you well know, that you're always making between like tech debt or like legacy or security fixes or whatever, and like an actual feature. And I was thinking like, a good example is if you actually, you remember those Amazon button things? Like if you actually had like a one-click reorder for a product, that would be an incredibly attractive feature. Like people would be like, we'll make tons of money with that, which you will, right? Like it's obvious. Versus like, well, we could do that, or we could go update our build software to make the build work better. And it's just like no one's ever going to update the build thing. But they tried to come up with a scheme of kind of like quantifying the benefit that they get. But at the end, what it amounted to, which is fine, is I think this is what it amounted to. It's an interesting way of thinking about it, is that if we address this tech debt more, we can do more in the future. So what you're investing in is capacity, right? That you get more capacity, and then you can kind of sort to. It's still a little weird, but you can sort of start to say like, oh, what I'm getting now is the ability to do double the amount. Not double would be terrible, but to do 0.4 more things like next release or whatever, which is sort of good, but it still is difficult to compare those two things. And I think that's why security stuff gets so much attention, because the value of security is just like, doesn't shit the bed. People tend to like that. So you can kind of always, or it seems like nowadays you can kind of just like claim security and do something important. Right? But then also like, then again, well, I don't know. I don't know enough about the security space, but you only see the reactive things when some bug is found and people scramble to do it. But I wonder how much time is spent proactively finding security problems. Like maybe that happens as well, that you're not just being reactive, you're being
all right. So let me throw an idea at you. So I was like, okay, so I read this article, and there just happened to be this week another article is basically a major cyber insurance company basically said, hey, we're not going to pay out for this incident that happened, right? And then anyway, there was a lawsuit, and ultimately the company got its money. And it's like, well, if you have to quantify it, maybe the place to go is actually the people that are selling this cyber, cyber security insurance,
cyber insurance,
right? Cyber insurance, whatever you call it. It's like, okay, that group of people does have a vested interest in making sure that you are using the most secure open source libraries that are available, right? Or that at least you've done some minimum thing. And I think this is the equivalent of when you buy auto insurance, they look at your driving record. Often here in the US, when you're getting some type of health insurance, they're at least incentivizing you to go see a doctor and like be aware of your health and things like that, right? Because they have a vested interest in you staying healthy, right? And that's back to this whole thing. I was like, well, maybe this is the place where the money is quantified. Like somebody knows the premium they're paying. Like I'm paying a premium of X millions of dollars or whatever it is. And the insurance company could, they can either make the premium high and just be like, hey, do whatever you want, but it's going to be a higher premium because, I don't know what you're doing. But hey, if you use these open source libraries or, you take these kinds of things, then we'll give you a lower premium. And then behind the scenes, that insurance company could funnel some of that money, in a way that's like, okay, well, let's make sure that we do have active contributors to all of these major projects and that they are constantly being updated, because we know in the end that'll reduce the amount of potential security violations out there, and we get to keep more of the premiums, right? So maybe there's an alignment there, but it's like kind of hard to get everybody on the same page.
The cyber insurance people, they need to be hiring these security people to work on open source things. That would be great. I mean, insurance companies have tons of money. It's great business. They should peel off some of that to just In the same way that like there's the Linux Foundation that Linux people work at or whatever, like there should be like the foundation for a secure cyber tomorrow or something like that. And what would the acronym for that be? And then they can pay for it because it helps them out. That would be fun. You know,
it feels impossible though. Like as I lay it out, I'm like, wow, that seems like a good idea.
There's a lot of moving parts.
It does. It just, but I don't know. I feel like, I don't know when here in the US, like at some point they were like, well, if you want to get more money for your insurance spending account, they're like, go get your cholesterol checked. Right. And it's like, and people do it. I mean, some people do it. Not everyone does it. So, but
it's like the libertarians won that round.
I don't know. Yeah. And in the end, I don't know. Like, maybe health insurance is a bad one because, like, I don't know. At the end, is that like a better thing? But at least somebody was incentivized. But I wanted to go back to your other thing. Is like, you know, you were talking about the quantifying of tech debt, and I think like this is an answer I think you never want to give at your job. But like, I just feel like the answer to this is like the reason you're going to do it is you've hired experienced people that know what's going on. And they like everybody knows, right? Like, this can't get so out of hand that it starts to, you know, really impact the performance of our product. And the same thing with usability. Like I see this all the time with enterprise software. And somebody was posting a Concur screenshot the other day and complaining about the UI. And it's like, we all know the UI is bad. It's not like people don't know, right? And like we all know how it could be fixed. And I'm not just picking on Concur here. Like I'm just thinking most enterprise software falls in this category. It's like, but the reason is we sort of demand these spreadsheet analysis, right, of things that like are just intuitively, if you have enough experience, and I'm not even talking like you need 50 years of experience. I'm talking about like you need 4 or 5 years to like get a sense of like, you know, is this good, right? Or is this tech debt good? And I think that's the problem. It's like we're just so unwilling to like trust people to be like, you're right, like this release is going to be light on features because there's a lot of tech debt. Or there's like, yes, you can technically do everything in the UI, but you know what happened is like to see a list of 1,000 items, someone has to click on 10, they only can see 10 entries at a time, and they have to click the arrow 100 times, right? Like it's all the time, like you see stuff like that. So I don't know if we'll ever get to the point that people embrace that, but it's like, if you've hired smart people and you really do trust them, it's like, let them do that. Just like when I get the oil changed in the car, like I don't need to have a long speech from the mechanic or, you know, or some technician explaining to me why that the car will eventually have problems if I don't change the oil. I just know that like, yeah, it's been about 3,000 or 5,000 or 8, whatever your car is, and you get it done. And it just like, until we get to that point, like we're going to live through like a lot of bad software is my thought. Yeah.
I think another thing that these people brought up that like, you know, or something they were talking about that reminded me of a bigger point is like, despite all the learning about like lean manufacturing and stuff, I think most people, or I think the idea of like end-to-end thinking and optimizing all the bottlenecks, you know, old Goldradian thinking, I just get the sense that like, as a whole, humanity doesn't do that. Even though like it makes sense, right? Like when you lay it out. And so, for example, they had the survey that this is turning into like an ad for this webinar, but it was good content. But like they had the survey that they send out to developers to like find the tech debt. And one of the things, there's a lot of questions about like setting up your workstation to the point where you can start coding, like what it takes to do that. And you can see what they're asking around is like, do we have tech debt around? I mean, this is the ultimate non-functional thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, do we have tech debt to just like
onboard
when it comes to the build process, your IDE environment? I mean, just like sitting down at your desk and just getting to code. Like that's a form of tech debt that people probably don't even think that much about. And like logically, if you had like a very pure lean way of thinking, you would be like, well, of course, in a factory, you've got like, I don't really know the names for this, but in a factory, you've got like setup time and unsetup time, right? Like if you've got a drill press, if all you're paying attention to is what it takes for someone to grab a lever and pull it down, you're not going to optimize shit, right? Like you got to look at all this other stuff. And so you've got to optimize the setup time as much as possible. And that would make sense in a factory. But then when it comes to like office work, I don't think anyone thinks that way. They're just like, hence emailing things around all the time and like not having that intuition that like, oh, we should speed up the way that your setup time works, like in an office environment. Like we've got to look at everything that happens from like having an idea to like the business changing to do it and optimize all of those bottlenecks through it. But it just seems like, I don't know if I have hope anymore that you can ever really do that.
Well, I think the hope is like you see things like this work pretty well at companies that I think are somewhere between like, I'm going to say 35 and 200 people, right? Because like you can generally know everyone, if not know them, you kind of know their name. And everyone is sort of like close enough to the processes and the people that control them that there's a constant communication cycle, right? Like, just your point about the onboarding is like, actually turns out it was pretty hard to set up the laptop. For this person, it took about a week. And then someone would be like, I can just create a standard image and it will work and things like that. But like, there's this like nice community where there's enough resources and there's enough tight connection communication paths to get things fixed. But then when you get either you're too small and you know about the problems, but you just have no ability to fix them because you're like doing so many other things, or you get too big that all the standardization starts to work against you, right? They're like, well, that's just the way it is because we had to build a laptop image for everyone. And I'm sorry that, that you have to install the extra tools. It's just like, what can we do? And it is to your point about like, I think to your earlier point about like, there is a point where you just sort of get, I would say maybe not give up hope, but you sort of like, there's acceptance, right? You're just sort of like apathetic. You're like, it is what it is. Right. And back to my Concur example, it's like, you know what? I can still find an expense report. It gets done. Right. It gets done and it's a little bit annoying, but who has the time to think about that?
Well, on that note, I got an email that I don't know if this means the Concur we're using is upgraded, but there's a new version of Concur that we will be exposed to at some point. So I'm very excited to see what it looks like, to see if Concur will acknowledge the back button in the browser, or it'll become an apostate of back buttonry. We'll find out about that. It'll be maybe you'll even be able to drag things to it. Or my favorite is when you've purchased your hotel and your airfare through Concur, right? Mm-hmm. Or you've rented a car. It's gotten better about this over the year, and then it still wants you to upload a receipt. Yeah, this happens often, and it just I'm sure it has something to do with enterprise integrations and if you're doing this, that, or the other. But it's just crazy. It's crazy making. Batch editing, that would be great. But it does, what was I looking at today? I was looking at something today. Oh, maybe I was in Salesforce. Yeah, I finally figured out kind of how to do some reporting on the effectiveness of my work as reflected in Salesforce. I don't know, I've got to explore it some more. And I figured out how to do one thing, and I thought of you, Brandon, because I had this very Brandon moment where I was like, okay, now I just need to download a CSV file so that I can open this up in Excel and do the real work. Yep. And it is just like, every time, you need export data, and really, can I just have this in a spreadsheet? Absolutely. That's what I want.
Mature websites have, when they say like download to Microsoft Excel format, you're just like, they get it. These are my people. Like banks that have that, where that's not even CSV, they're like Excel. They're like, you don't have to do, because of course, when you download a CSV, you open an Excel, you do some advanced formatting. And then it's like, if you forget, God forbid you forget to be like save as new Excel format, you lose all your stuff because it goes back to CSV, right? And it's like, so for all the people that have implemented download to Microsoft Excel, like you are my people, and I appreciate the extra step that you went, because that's a good example. Somebody was like, we could just do CSV. It's like, no, if we make it to Excel, it's going to be a million times easier for everyone. So I love to see, more of those kinds of features implemented.
And then who maintains that open source library that generates Excel? We need to check into that and make sure. Yeah, that we
should make sure they're not inserting some like weird arbitrary stuff. But it's kind of back to the SAT thing that you're talking about before. It's like, think about, we're picking on Concur, but it's just the example. Like I have no problem with Concur. I use it all the time. Use it at many companies. They're very successful, so I don't want to be like unfair to it. But your thing about scanning receipts, it's like anyone that has done an expense report, right? You know how painful it is to be ask for receipts that are either very low value or like literally you have the transaction from the credit card company. Like the receipt, I mean, there's nothing more about the receipt that's going to be done. So back to my thing about the SATs, like here we just saved whatever 1.7 million hours next year when people take it electronically SAT. If someone had that same mindset, was like, how many millions of hours will we save people scanning and uploading receipts that serve no purpose? They are not providing any necessary audit trail for anything. I mean, I think I'm just going to say that's going to save the world 4 million man hours. I mean, just off the top of my head, it's like something like that is probably the potential. So if somebody at Concur was thinking that way, like I'm about to save the industry 4 million hours, like that would be a better way to phrase that than like, oh, it's fine. Cote can take a picture of his phone and then export it to iPhotos and then get it from TIFF to PDF and then, drag it to the PDF, like that whole little process you have to do. So
not a big deal.
So make it happen. Somebody in the expense industry.
I always figure the people who are making the decisions are like, why doesn't he just have his assistant do it like I do?
Well, that's the other one, right? Yes.
And it is yeah, I mean that's a good example of not paying attention to like end-to-end optimizing things. But it makes me think, I bet it would be fascinating to look at the marketing material that Concur puts out and kind of like reverse engineer it from like knowing how marketing works for enterprise software, because this might be a fun game for people. Maybe what's his name? The professor in Chicago. Although he does programming, not marketing. But if we did some marketing exercises, you would reverse engineer their marketing playbook, like identify the personas they're going after, try to like uncode their buying process, the customer journey based on their marketing material, figure out if this is top of funnel or mid funnel, like this material that you have, and just kind of like based on your encounter with their very mature marketing material, draw up, make a presentation that was used to sort through and think through this material. What are the campaigns that they're doing? And I bet you could go in there and kind of reverse engineer what that strategy deck was based on it. And also, it'd be fascinating as an actual user. Fascinating is the wrong word, but it'd be interesting as like a longtime Concur user to go see what promises they're making in their marketing about the software. Because I feel like if you were selling Concur and you had screenshots or did a demo with the Concur UIs that I've used all these times, like it wouldn't work very well. Like there's got to be some other UIs that they use.
Well, it's more the integrations. I'm sure it's the integration with SAP and Oracle Financials and the backends, and it's time to get payment, and it's the time to like have audit materials. So
maybe those UIs are awesome.
Nobody in the buying process there, or if anyone's there, the person representing the end user is either not in the room or has very little sway in the actual decision. And that's why, back to your thing about investment planning, right? It's like, that's why when the Concur product management team sits down and they're doing investment planning and they're like have to present to their chief product officer, right? And none of the usability stuff is going to move the needle, or at least they think that. Everyone is convinced of that, right? And that's why it's not that they don't know. Like, I'm sure they know it. I'm sure they use the product as well. And like, this thing is just not so good, right? But it's like that's the whole thing. So I think maybe to your presentation done by this, we'll call them like the MBA marketing group. It's like for them at the end to make the case like, no, you're actually, the missed opportunities is you're ignoring all of this, right? At your quote unquote own expense. That's the kind of slide you would use, right? You'd kind of like have someone tagline that and be like, if you were to focus on these things that you think are not worth it, you'd actually create an immense amount of goodwill in the user base, and it will actually help you, if you will, grow your company. At least that would be kind of like an interesting presentation for someone to make that case.
Yeah. Because the last thing you would want to go for as far as usability is kind of what you're saying is you will be saving your workers time, and so that like their productivity will increase because they can file their expenses faster. But I bet ultimately the buyer is usually the CFO, right? Who's, doesn't do any of this stuff on their own, so they don't really care about the pain of it. And like, they're probably also kind of like, ultimately, I want to make sure that we are as compliant as possible.
Yeah, risk averse, right? They care more about the compliance and usability.
Which reminds me of another evolving like theory. to the digital transformation stuff is like, a lot of people, they say things are in bad shape because of like compliance or something. And I'm starting to think that is typically bullshit. That it's just like, and usually what they mean is like, because I don't want to do the work to actually go see what we're being compliant to. I just want to follow what we have. Because it seems like over time, if you go and like, usually you can go and like read these things. At least this is the mythology, the lore, the stories you hear, and you can interpret them in many different ways. Or maybe some new technology comes along and you don't have to worry about it so much. But usually people blaming compliance is just like, seems like an easy out when what it really means is like, oh, well, we should go check that. And
yeah,
make sure
well, I
we
think
follow those rules.
the reason that happens is like so many of the things that come from compliance start with like legislation that is like fairly easy to actually understand. Like Sarbanes-Oxley, like it's just a line or two. It's something like, demonstrate control of this, right? It's like a very, very simple thing to understand. But then what happens is you get a bunch of auditors and various people involved, and then they start to define like what that means. And if it goes on long enough, all that ever happens is people add to it. No one actually takes stuff away, right? No one goes back and says like, hey, we originally thought we had to do all of this, but like, let's look back at the thing. It's like, we can still demonstrate control by doing this. And let's
I
get
guess
rid
you
of all
have court
these steps.
cases too and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
you have precedents and things like that, but very few times do things get simpler, right? And I think, and then no one is willing to challenge that, right? Because it's very hard to like find someone that's incentivized to be like, hey, like this 15 steps you've just put here, we could do it in this one step, right? Most of the time people are like, no, let's just do it the way we've been doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You always need a crisis, like someone's hair on fire before you fix something.
Right. Or kind of back to the, like, you have the, the SAT will change only because there's a pandemic and people are going to stop requiring the tests. Now, suddenly things got a lot easier. Maybe one day, I don't know what will happen in the expense systems. Something will happen and we'll be like, yep, turns out a credit card charge is all we need. That's it. We're good.
Yeah. Yeah. My theory is that like all the executives have to file their own expenses, and magically within a year, it'll be a better process. Like
I
that's
totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to eat your own shit. Don't have others do it. Well, enterprise software, Brandon, covered. I think the only thing to cover briefly before we move on to the later part of the show, it looks like Microsoft is doing well, Brandon.
They are $50 billion in the quarter. I think we can say, things seem to be all right. If you make $50 billion in a quarter, doing all right, my friends, doing all right.
Yeah.
I guess, quote unquote, Azure didn't grow quite as fast, but Azure was still, although of course, always the caveat, like Microsoft sort of breaks out as cloud services with other stuff. But I think we can look at that and say like, they continue to do very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I still, I ask this every now and then, but I need someone to write up like what happened there in a very like practical, tactical, obviously Microsoft has been doing very well for like 5-10 years or so. Maybe it's 5. I don't even know when it started, but man, there's some strategy decks there that started to turn things around, or not turn things around, because I think it was fine at the time, but change things to a great deal. And it might be a little bit of halo effect to make an old reference, but still, it'd be fun to see what happened there.
Well, I mean, I guess to answer your question is like, I guess one of us is going to have to go read the CEOs of Microsoft. What is it? Satya Nadella, right? I guess his book is Hit Refresh. So I guess we could read that. I'm sure he goes into details.
I was thinking that. It
may hard to like get on that. I don't know. That one feels like it would be. It might on Audible. It's an audiobook, so I guess I could. I don't know. Maybe one of us needs to volunteer. But I feel like that. I don't know. Maybe that won't have the answers. But I think he probably attempts to answer that question in there.
It might at least cover the culture aspect. Like how is it that we think people should be working and existing, and then one could assume that like that was put in place and that causes part of the success. But then the other part of that literature needs to be like, how was that put into place? Just like we were just talking about, no one wants to change. So how do you put things? How do you get people to?
But this is just based on the cover. Let me just tell you if this gets you in. Okay, so it's a New York Times bestseller. The title, as I mentioned, Hit Refresh. The subtitle is The Quest to Rediscover Microsoft's Soul and Imagine a Better Future for Everyone. And the foreword is by Bill Gates. So that book, at least as it's actually that title, I think is just trying to tell you, Cote, the answer of how they did it, quote unquote, refresh Microsoft and reimagine the soul. Like that's right at you, right? I mean, I feel like that book cover is telling you I'm going to give you those answers.
Yeah. Okay.
But it feels like when you look at it, you're like, I don't even when I read it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure the answers aren't in this book. Like, do you have that like weird discontinuity? It's almost like you said you're going to answer exactly what I want to know, but I still don't believe you.
Yeah. Well, it's just that there's such a high failure rate for business books at being useful that like going into any of them, you're just like, this is going to be not useful. It's just going to be a bunch of stories. Instead of like, instead of being like a manual or a workbook or something to actually help things out. I mean, every now and then you get like a lean canvas or a halo effect book, but then you just got a whole bunch of like, people just wrote up the same old shit again with different words.
I think the thing is there are no manuals. That's the book. That's the business book. There's probably a business book written about that. There are no
manuals. That's like Seth Godin's like 50th book is going to be called No Manuals, and then it just has one page and it says there are no manuals. Thanks for purchasing this book. I went to Princeton, by the way.
Sold as an NFT. That's how it all ends.
That's your Web3 update for this episode. Sold as an NFT. Well, speaking of, do we have any bureaucracy for this episode, Brandon?
Absolutely. We've got a couple of things. One, I want to thank Chris for writing in. I sent him some stickers. He's in Tulsa, which I think Tulsa reminds me of Austin, the one time I went there. There's a nice river running through it. So I don't know. Cote, you ever been in Tulsa? You have any thoughts on Tulsa?
That's where my son was born.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've spent a lot of time in Tulsa. I mean,
there you go. You have
relative to what you would expect. There's Tulsa is not the ultimate, but it's there's that theory that the dominant architectural design of a city represents its financial apex. And I think that is definitely the case in Apex because it's full of like Art Deco stuff, which is like what, 1910, 1920, when there's a huge oil boom there. And so it's there's a great museum there. I forget what it's called, but it's like an old Art Deco house. And I don't know, it's got good stuff. Right, and they got that Breyers. That's Europe. And is it Breyers? It's like a ice cream, not Breyers. It's like an ice cream and hamburger shop, but they also have like a little convenience store. Someone who's listening to this will know what it's called.
All right.
They have a convenience store, and like once you get like a little north of DFW, and I don't know how far north it goes, but you get this whatever it's called. It starts with a B, and it's interesting because not only is it a burger and ice cream place, but they also have, as I think people would call it in the Northeast, they also have kind of like a convenience store bodega in there. Oh, so okay. When we would go to them, I would notice that a lot of people would just go in there to get groceries.
Oh,
and so it's like a weird. It's kind of like a super Target or super Walmart, except not super and really small.
Except the opposite of both. All right. Well, maybe Chris will write in and tell us like what the name of that store is. I don't know. I've only been to Oklahoma like a few times, so I didn't notice it. But speaking of listener follow up, so last week I was talking about like some fruity drink that you drink at cricket, or at least I did. Robert informed me that the drink name is Pimm's. I could not remember it last night, but absolutely. So I would recommend that everyone, when you go to your cricket match, get yourself a pitcher of Pimm's. It's not like the most I don't know, masculine drink, but it's great. I loved it. It's very refreshing. So I really enjoyed that. Also from Slack, somebody posted this. I don't know, Cote, if you've watched it. It's line goes up, which is basically quote unquote the problem with NFTs. So this person, I guess Dan Olson, it's been viewed a few million times, really goes into detail about some of the problems around Web3 and specifically NFTs. So this thing is probably on the order of 90 minutes to 2 hours. So you have to really want it, right, to go through. But I thought it was, I think I know what's going on in this space, but it was interesting for someone to lay out kind of the bear case, like a lot of the problems. So if you're, I don't know, probably everyone has an opinion, but if you're interested in just sort of like, obviously he has somewhat of an agenda, but he does a really good job of just explaining a lot of like, oh, this is how you kind of do fraudulent trades, and this is how you do like wash trades, and like kind of just explained a lot of the pitfalls that like maybe I was somewhat aware of, if not. So if nothing else, even if you love Web3 and you think it's great, like watching this gives you kind of a sense of things to watch out for. But it is long. It is really long. So
well, maybe when I finally watch all of the Kenji cooking videos, I'll switch over to this. Film my 90 minutes. I'll learn how to make noodles and all sorts of Chinese dishes.
And you'll know how to prevent avoid fraud in Web3.
I like how our bureaucracy is also turned into follow-up. That's good. Bureaucracy and follow-up.
We don't have room for another segment. We're packed in, so it all just goes right here. And then finally, bureaucracy. Let's see here. I think it's Michael. Michael Wild. I did an interview with him a while back. Anyway, he wants you to work at Honeycomb as a senior product marketing manager. So that link's in the show notes. You can also go into the Slack jobs channel, find that out. And Brian wants you to be a senior product manager working on cloud infrastructure in quote unquote remote, which I guess means probably anywhere in the United States. So if you're looking for jobs, you can go in the jobs channel. Both these links will be in the show notes, and you can probably find Michael and Brian, and they would tell you more about it in Slack if you are so inclined to apply for those jobs.
Great opportunities.
Right.
Well, there's I looked it up. The name of the place is Brahms. Braums.
Okay.
Brahms.
Right. Got it.
And so there's several conferences. There's that conference rescheduled to be at the end of May 23rd to 26th. And there's one in Wisconsin as well, where there's a call for speakers open. There's also a call for speakers open for DevOps Day Chicago and Birmingham, which if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/341, you can find links to those. And I think we have nailed down, as they say, the dates for our spring tour events. A lot of them in America. I think we're just going to have one over here in Europe, but that's fine. But I'll start advertising those when we have, as they say in the business, Brandon, landing pages for them.
That's right.
Landing pages. You can go and register. Love a landing page. I think this year we're going to do some little executive events during them. Brandon. Which
fancy.
Will be,
fancy.
Yes.
Maybe you should make them all do their own expense reports while you're there. That would be fun.
Yes.
That'd be a fun event for everyone. Hey, let me teach you about digital transformation. We're all going to open up Concur. Go on.
We're going to file our expenses. No assistance allowed. Yeah. You should check out, we reference the Slack channel a lot. There's always a lot going on over there. Also, if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com, you don't have to put 341 at the end. You can just go to softwaredefinedtalk.com. You can click up there and join the Slack channel. All sorts of things like that. So, did you mention stickers already, Brandon?
I didn't, but if you want any stickers, just send me your postal address at stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world.
That's right. They're good. They're good stickers, die-cast. So, with that, Brandon, what do you have to recommend this week?
Probably something people already know about, but I really like it. Ozark Season 4. So they broke Season 4 into 2 parts. So it's Ozark Season 4 Part 1. I think it just released on Netflix last week, and I binged it all. Really like Ozark. I think it's Jason Bateman's finest work. I'm sure some people will disagree with what's that show everybody likes?
Arrested Development.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like one of the few people that Arrested Development, fine. But Ozark, I love it. So if you're interested, if for some reason you've never heard of the show, obviously start at the beginning. It's you got 4 seasons to go. But if you're just someone that likes it, then check it out. I think Season 4 Part 1 is as good as any of the rest. And we only got one more Season 4 Part 2. The series is over then. So what will happen to Marty and the family? Stay tuned.
This reminds me, I think I mentioned this, but I discovered, that in our Disney Plus, all of our accounts, the adult accounts, were set for like 16 and below. And did I tell this story?
No, so you're like, whoa, look at all these other shows.
Yeah, and this is classic enterprise stuff. Is like I for some reason I couldn't change it like in the UI, like it,
right.
And I looked up all the help stuff and whatever. It just wasn't possible.
Kid, like once you're in the kid profile, you can't change the kid profile.
Yeah. Or I mean, no, it said that I was an adult. It just like there was something weird, and so this is one of the best, maybe the best innovation in enterprise in any software is that little chat window at the bottom for customer support. Right. And so I just opened that up and chatted with someone, and they were like, "Yep, oh." Okay, I'm going to reset your account, so that it has this there. And so I don't know what the deal is. I think maybe, I feel like I've told this story, but I think maybe I signed up for it like the first month they had it in the Netherlands. Like it's the when it came out originally.
Okay.
And so maybe like all great software, it was just running. My database needed to be updated to. For some reason, the feature flag hadn't been flipped on my account.
The administrator flag had been flipped the other way.
But yeah, they have like the Walking Dead in there, and they also have this annoying part 1, part 2 of a season. But
well, maybe we'll talk about it next week. I don't know. Netflix, their earnings, they're like way off as a stock. So I don't know. Maybe they're the quote unquote like good product, bad business. Like it's like a weird thing. It's like you're super successful, everyone's subscribed to you, but like.
Is it when
people don't think you're going to grow, and it's like so this kind of makes me sad, right? Because I think like shows like Ozark and others that cost more money, right? It's I guess let me say this, a long tangent here is like it kind of could be going to enterprise software. It's like, well, once every family has it, right? All you need to do is produce a show as cheaply as possible that someone in your family wants. So for me in my household, it's like, well, my son likes a lot of the reality based like cooking shows, and like they're super cheap to make. He likes to watch them. They're fine. They're super family friendly and fun, but like it's not like the Ozark kind of stuff that I like. So now I'm sort of makes me kind of sad. It's like, oh, they're just gonna make these kind of like reality based TVs, and we're just all stuck to pay for it. But we're not really gonna get like the shows that I want because they're super expensive and they're probably not profitable. So I don't know. Netflix, I'm worried about you. It makes me sad because you made such good TV for me over the years.
Well, I don't, maybe my theory, I shouldn't even say theory. I would be curious. I'm always have in my back pocket this idea of like, how much growth do you really need? Could you just make money? And like, I wonder if it's a case of just like Netflix, just like there's, they can't have double digit growth anymore. Cause like at some point, like, once everyone has it, this is kind of like Yogi Berra business strategy. It's like, that company's not successful anymore because everyone buys it.
Right.
Like, and at some point, like, you can't really grow. And then you get stuck in that dumb thing of like, no, we need to acquire a new business to cross sell. And just like,
well, I think we talked about it. Like their thing is games, right? Which I think we sort of ranted on.
Yeah.
I probably ranted on. I was like, I don't think it's a good decision, but I get like, again, back to like, in the room, I think I was sort of like, hey, why don't they do live sports? They could do a lot of good things for live sports. But I'm sure what happened was they were like, listen, look at the market for games. And of course, like Microsoft bought Activision for like $80 billion. And they're like, games are worth like one of the most profitable niches and growing niches in all of it versus sports or more scripted dramas, right? So I'm sure at some point they're like, yep, we're going to do games. And like, I'm pretty sure it's not going to work, but like, I get it. Like you see the logic, right? They're like, yeah, we got to get in games so we can grow. And it's like, well, I'm sure going to miss my shows like Ozark, but okay, go for it.
Yeah. Games. Who knows?
But anyway, Cote, what are you recommending this week?
Oh, this week, I finally got around to making this thing that I had. I want to make a generalized recommendation that is pea soup. Or the way that I like to make it is more of kind of like a pea stew. You get your split peas, you cook those up. And then here, the way they do it here is they sell, like everywhere, they sell these kits that you can make things of. And there's a burrito kit, if you can believe that. I think I've actually used it once and it wasn't so bad. But you buy a kit with the peas in it and they have, how do you say this? I forget if we have this back in America or the States. Do you have like celeriac? It's like this big ball, and I think it's like the bottom of celery or something, but they have those everywhere around here. Like the things they have here that, of course you have those, I can't think of it, but you got those little like elliptical heads of cabbagey stuff that people just love the shit out over here, especially in Belgium. What are those things called? They're everywhere. And I feel like this celeriac thing or celrac is not an American thing, but it's this big like thing you slice up that tastes kind of like celery. You put that in there and you cube up some carrots and put it in there. And you're supposed to use a hand blender to blend it all together into like, a soup. Because as the Dutch will tell you, they love smashing things. Anything that they can smash together into a paste is like Dutch cuisine. But what I found is that the peas will cream themselves. But if you leave those chunky things not blended up, you got yourself a little stew there. And then you can get another Dutch specialty treat, which is how would they say it, the roquefort, which is like, and it's usually unrefrigerated sometimes, but it's one of those what would we call these? We kind of have these back in America, but it's like, you know, a sausage with a string attaching two ends of it, and it's like smoky taste. We have those, but they're always a little different. Like usually it's kind of like peppery and things like that. But these are just very mild sausages, but they have the smoky taste to them. And of course you get one of those and just throw it into the pea soup, and you know, you got smoky pea soup, you're off to the races. You're supposed to cook it with like a ham hock or something, but I never do that. You know, it's a lot of work. Actually, it's not a lot of work. I just never plan ahead. So check that out. This is a good time of year to have pea soup, and you know, try to make it a little chunkier than you might like. It's one of the few things I make that the kids get excited about, which I wouldn't have been excited about pea soup when I was young. I would think that was disgusting. Well, on that note, one thing that's not disgusting is the time you spent with us listening to Software Defined Talk. The show notes for this episode, how to subscribe, join the Slack channel, get stickers, whatever you like. You can find that all out if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/341 and really get in there with the pea soup. With that, bye-bye.
All right, good job, Cote, as always. I think appreciate everyone hanging here in the chat. I like Brian's I do like Brian's spoiler. And I do think if there was another season of Ozark, they probably would do NFTs. This is his spoiler. In the end, they stop working for the drug lord and go into NFTs. That would be funny. I would like to see Jason Bateman or Marty Bird work in NFTs. It seems like he would be perfect at money laundering NFTs. So that'd be a good plot point.
All you do is sell an image? That sounds great.
That's right. Well, you have to let me know. I'll be interested. It's so long. I don't know who else has watched it, but like I mean, I guess 1 million people have watched that in line. What is it? That YouTube video. You have to let me know, because that's sort of like, that's super dense content delivered on YouTube. It'd be interesting for you just to watch 5 or 10 minutes and be like, wow, this is like, if you think it's good or bad. Just forget about like the content, just like the delivery of it. So I'd be curious to hear your take.
Whoa, so. It's 2.6 million. Who is this guy?
Yeah, so you gotta go
folding ideas.
Yeah, get the whole thing. So let me know if you watch it. I'd like your take on like if it was good or bad, and if the content was good.
We I think every quarter VMware does this multi-cloud briefing thing, kind of like a little online video, and the one we posted recently, just like 5 days ago, has like 600,000 views.
Yeah,
and I was like, what? How did this happen?
I know, it's amazing. Somebody's channels.
How did we get all these?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm with you, man. So.
I need to go check out those analytics and see who's looking at it at what. But
all right. Well, hey, listen. Thanks for everyone in the stream. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. I know we started a little earlier this week. I think next week we'll be back at close to our regular time, but we'll see. We'll see if we can. One day I'll get us organized and actually post a schedule. But until then, I appreciate everyone hanging out. So we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.